Hey guys, welcome back. This Java video tutorial is intended for my APCSA students to use as a reference. This time let's talk about control structures. Okay, but let me define what control structure is first. Well, control structure is like how the lines of code are executed. And actually in programming, there are three control structures. Now, to tell you more about those, let's go to this handout. Okay, so the first control structure that we have or we use in programming is what we call sequential structure. Well, among the three, this is the easiest one, okay, because it is according to this code, as what this code shows, it is very straightforward, okay? Now, the execution of lines of codes here is sequential. What do you mean by sequential? It means in order or in series. Now, the first line that will be executed is obviously the first line. The second line will not be executed first because it is not the first line in the code. So the reason why it's called sequential, it's because the execution is line by line, one line after the other. So no skipping, no jumping. So again, the execution of the code here will start from the first line down to the last one. Okay, so if you run this code, you will see Saudi Aramco, College Preparatory Center, and Dhahran KSA. So again, this is what we call sequential structure. The easiest one, the simplest one, the straightforward one. Okay? And then the second control structure we have or we use in programming is what we call selection structure or selection statement. Here we help the computer to decide what line of code to execute. Okay, and then the third and the last control structure we use in programming is what we call repetition structure or repetition statement. Here we decide what part of code to put in a repetition or what we call loop. Okay, so later on I will discuss repetition statement in a separate video. But in the meantime, let's focus on the control structure. Okay. Now, there are three varieties of selection structures. Okay? So selection structure. So the first variety is what we call single selection statement. In single selection statement, computer selects or ignores a single group or of action, a single or group of actions, sorry. Okay, so I will explain that in a bit. The second variety is what we call double selection structure. Now, computer selects between two different actions or group of actions. Again, I will explain more of this in a bit. And then the third and the last variety of control structure is what we call multiple selection structure. Okay, so let me start by giving you or by explaining to you what single selection structure is. Okay, let's go to Eclipse IDE. Okay, here I'm going to write a simple code that would ask the user to input a grade. Okay, the grade of student is between, of course, 0 and 100 inclusive. So that's where where we're going to base our output. Okay, so the output that I want to display is the message you passed. Okay, that is the message I want to print. So if I run this, this is the output. But why the output is you pass? Well, in fact, there's no grade yet, so it doesn't make sense. So what I wanted to say is, this is the output I want to print, you pass. Now let's ask the user to input, shall we? So I want to print enter grade. So this is the message to the user, okay, when the user runs this code. And of course, to let the user input, let's use a variable of type int, okay, and let me call it grade, and the grade must be coming from the user. So we have to write this method calling here, and the method that I want to call is nextInt. Okay, now so the grade now is entered by the user. So the question is, when should this be displayed? Should this be displayed? This line should this line be executed all the time? Of course not. This line should only be executed if the grade is, let's say for example, greater than or equal to 75. But if the grade entered by the user is less than 75, this statement is not supposed to be executed. So how can we do that? How can we tell the computer that, hey, do not print this, do not execute this line unless the grade is greater than or equal to 75? So that is possible by using what we call if statement. Okay, if statement is done by writing the word if followed by a pair of parentheses. Now, what is inside the parentheses of if statement? Now, the inside is what we call a Boolean expression. Now, Boolean expression returns either true or false. Okay, the Boolean expression is evaluated, and if returns true, then this body of this block of if statement shall be executed. Now, if the Boolean expression returns false, so nothing happens. Computer ignores this. This will not be executed. Okay? So again, what is the Boolean expression that should return true? So the computer displays this. So the computer executes this. Okay, so again, like what I said a while ago, the grade must be greater than or equal to 75 in order for the student to pass. Okay, the grade must be greater than or equal to 75, so the computer executes this. Okay, so if the grade entered by the user is less than 75, the computer ignores this statement. The computer will not or doesn't execute this statement here. So this is simply what we call single selection. There's only one selection we have here, no more, no less. Okay, but what if I want to print another message if the grade entered by the user is less than 75? So we are going to have another if statement for that. Okay, we have to be more specific this time. So what we're going to have now is what we call double selection statement, meaning to say, if this Boolean expression returns false, there's another action that will be executed. Okay, and that action is printing of another message which says you failed. Okay, and again we will be needing another if statement for this. Okay, so we're gonna have grade is less than 75. Now again, the body or the block of if statement must be indented to make your code readable. Now, so again, we have a double selection structure or double selection statement. If this Boolean expression returns true, this will be executed. And if this Boolean expression returns false, this is what I like to be executed or to be printed on the screen. Okay, so okay, let's run this code. Let's see if this code is working. Let's say I type 90. Which one should be printed on the screen? You passed or you fail? Well, let's see. So after inputting the grade, let's press enter key. So obviously 90, which is inside the grade, is greater than or equal to 75. So therefore, this Boolean expression returns true. And if Boolean expression returns true, it goes inside the if statement block and do or execute whatever inside of it. Now, the computer evaluates the second if, and since 90 is not less than 75, so this is not executed. This line of code is not executed because obviously this Boolean expression returns false simply because 90 is not less than 75. But let me run it again. Let me input a grade of like 50. Okay, so obviously just by looking at the code, this Boolean expression is the one that will return true. Okay, and then of course this is inside that if statement, so this statement will be executed. So let's see, let's press enter key this time. See, obviously the message displayed is you failed. Now there is a bit of what we call disadvantage if we use if statements, two if statements here. Okay, because if this condition turns true, let's say for example I run it again, let me input a grade of 88. So obviously 88 is greater than or equal to greater than 75, so obviously it returns true and this statement is executed. Now do you think there is it makes sense if computer still evaluates this even though the first condition already returns true? So it doesn't make sense if this condition is still evaluated. So if the grade is greater than 75 or equal to 75, there's no need for the computer to know if the grade is less than 75. So what should we do in order for the computer to ignore this Boolean expression? So instead of using another if, we have to use else if instead, so that if this Boolean expression returns true, the computer ignores this. Okay, it doesn't make sense if the computer still evaluates if the grade is less than 75. Well, in fact, it is greater than 75 if the grade entered by the user is 88. So in order for the computer to ignore the other if statements, if one statement returns true, so we rather use else if instead of simply using if statement. Okay, now this again, this is what we call double selection statement. So there are two possibilities. Okay, if the grade is greater than or equal to 75 or less than. Now I have one more thing I want to tell you here. Now if this is the last possibility, of course if it's not greater than or equal to 75, it is less than, definitely, nothing else. So you may not write this condition over here, this Boolean expression, because definitely if it's not greater than or equal to 75, well, it is less than 75. So you have an option not to write the if condition in the else part. Okay, so this is more efficient than writing the condition explicitly. like this. So you may not write that if Boolean expression here, Boolean condition. Okay, if condition rather. Now this is the second variety of selection structure. Now what is the third variety of selection structure? That third one is what we call multiple statement. So meaning it's more than two possibilities. It's not just passed and failed. It's more than that. Now let me change my my logic here. Now I want to change instead of printing passed or failed, I want to print the letter grade. Okay, I want to print the letter grade instead of you passed or you failed. Now here at CPP we have a lot of letter grades. We have A plus, we have an A, we have a B, we have a B plus, and so on and so forth. F up to F. Okay, so F of course is the failing one. It's the fail grade, the grade that we give to students if the students failed. Okay, so let me change this code a bit. So I want to display an A, for example. Let me just make it simple as possible. So I want to print an A if the grade is greater than, because A is between, let's say, between 90 and 100. So let me write a Boolean expression here that says if grade is greater than or equal to 90. Okay, so the computer displays A. Okay, now again A is given to students if the grade he or she gets is between 90 and 100. So meaning greater than or equal to 90. Now another possibility of the grade that a student can get is B. Okay, is a B. So I have to write another if statement here because there are still more possibilities here. Okay, this is not the last possibility. The last possibility that the student can get, the last possible grade that the student can get is an F. So I have to write another if statement here because again this is not the last possibility. This is not the last possible grade the student can get. So I have to be specific. If a student a student gets a grade of B, if he or she gets a grade of a grade between 80 and 89, so greater than or equal to 80. So it falls. The range must be from 80 to 89. Okay. So if the grade of students is between 80 and 89, the letter grade B is displayed. Now, how many possible letter grade left? So we have C, we have D, and we have F. So for example, school gives these letter grades to students A, B, C, D, and F. Okay. Now, a student gets a grade of C if he or she gets between maybe 70 and 79. If the grade of students is between 70 and 79, then the student gets a grade of C. Okay, so I have another else if here because again C is not the last possible grade the student can get. So I have to write another if here. So if the grade of the student is between 70 and 79, so greater than or equal to 70, then student gets a grade of C. Okay, so I want to change this to C. Again, C is done. A, B, C are done. Next, the next possible grade the student can get, okay, is a grade of D. So I still have two more possibilities here. I still have two more possible grades here. So I have to write another else if. So let me just copy this and paste down here. So if the grade is between 60 and 69, so the grade the student gets is grade of D. It's a D. Okay. So if the grade of a student is greater than or equal to 60, so the student gets a D. Okay, so the computer displays a D. So A, B, C, D letter grades are done, and there's only one possible letter grade that student can get, which is F. Okay, so I don't have to have another if statement here like this. So if grade is greater than or equal to 0, then the student gets an F. Okay? Like what I said, if it is the last possibility, the if condition here is optional. You may not write it explicitly because it is the last possibility. Okay? So again, this is what we call multiple selection statement of selection structure. Multiple because, you know, as you can see here, it has more than one or even more than two, right? If it's just two possibilities, we call it double selection. And if we have just one possibility here, we have what we call single selection statement. Okay, so I hope this simple code would help you in so many ways. Thank you for watching. Until next time, bye bye.